Good afternoon. You're listening to My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm your host, Jasmine Urbina, here in the studio today with my dad and co-host Alex Urbina. And today we are going to be talking about the relationship course that you have going on this weekend. So it's going to be kind of fun. We have the relationship course pre-show, and then next week we're going to talk about the relationship course post-show. So kind of what happens after, and then right now we're going to talk about what we think is going to happen, which probably won't happen.
Yeah, that's funny. Just anticipating what's going to happen. A lot of the times, things that you think are going to happen don't happen, and we'll kind of figure that out. So, but let's talk a little bit about what is the relationship course. The relationship course is a 2-day transformational experiential workshop designed for people that want to learn about how to master relationships, starting with the relationship first with myself, because I think a lot of people don't realize that they are in a relationship first with themselves. I know I didn't when I was young. I just didn't think like that. I just thought that I was in a relationship with other people. I never realized until I started working on myself that I'm actually in relationship with everything. I'm in relationship to my pain. I'm in relationship to my fears. I'm in relationship to the world in so many different levels. And so this exercise and this weekend, we're really going to dive into what is relationship, what's the meaning of it, what's the value of it, and more importantly, how can I master my results in relationships.
Yeah, and I did the relationship course as a sit-in, like I observed it one time before, and I remember thinking, wow, this is probably so scary for these couples. And so now that I'm actually going to be in it and be one of the couples, I'm even more scared, because I remember I was really young too, so I saw a lot of adults in it, and I saw them kind of working through their things, and 30-year marriages, whatever, 40-year, even the new relationships, it was like they were going through the same thing. It wasn't like the new couple was perfect and happy and everything was so great, and then the old couple was going through problems. It wasn't like that. It was everybody was in the same boat pretty much.
Yeah, just know this, that you are at different levels in your relationships, and it doesn't matter how long you've been doing them. It doesn't matter how long you've been practicing your ability to relate or be in relationships during the whole time that you've been together. We're all at different levels. The trick is who am I being in my relationship that I can create the kind of results that my heart yearns for, that my heart desires. Another thing I wanted to point out is, from your perspective, you were looking at the couples that were in the relationship, but you probably weren't aware of the people that weren't couples. And in this relationship workshop that we're doing this weekend, it's not all couples. It's for everybody. So I have single people there. I have divorced people there, we obviously have couples there. But the relationship course isn't just about being in a relationship. It's about you learning how to be in a relationship and how to master it.
Yeah, and I remember too, I was applying some of the things that you were saying just to my overall general relationships, my relationship with my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, my friends, and it's funny because all the things that came up for people applied to every single relationship. I mean, even stuff when it comes to like love and being with somebody, it applies to your family. You love your family, you love your friends, and it's crazy how there really isn't a separation between our romantic relationship, our family relationships, our friend relationships, and our relationships with ourselves. And I was really young at the time, and I didn't take into consideration that I was in a relationship with myself. But had I been sitting in there as a single person and thinking about me with myself, it would be a lot different. And I hope that the people who do come as singles not only reflect on either their past relationships, but the relationship with their self and their current relationships.
Yeah, here's the first thing that I want to talk about when we're talking about relationships. And the first thing that you really want to look at is, the question I'm going to ask that you should sit in is, do I take 100% accountability for my entire relationship? Do I act as though I am responsible for? Or am I in my relationships most of the time as the victim? Meaning, you do this to me, I can't believe this, you're doing it again. Is this the way it's always going to be? As though you have no power to change it. That the victim perspective in relationships is a curse. You cannot and will not grow and expect your relationship to go to another level if you are operating from the victim perspective, meaning things are always happening to me. You're always doing this. Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? And you're always focusing on the other person, either trying to correct them or get them to do things the way you think it should be done, the way you think it's better than, and so forth. You have to start looking through a new set of filters called I am my relationships. I bring the relating into the relationship. So I got to look at what's missing from me. I need to take 100% accountability for what's missing. And that's a very challenging and at times difficult for human beings to wrap their mind around that. For whatever reason, we don't like to look at, okay, let's do an accountability thing and look at, okay, what's missing for me that my daughter is treating me like this? What's missing from me that my son has the audacity to challenge me or talk back to me like that? What's missing for me that my wife doesn't trust me? We don't operate like that. For some reason, we want to blame other people, and we want to complain, and we want to moan about how you're not doing this and you're not doing that, rather than looking at me saying what am I not doing, what am I not course correcting, so that we can cause a shift in the results of my relationships.
I think a lot of people were raised or taught or believe in the idea that relationships are 50-50, because I remember being taught that in school, and I remember being taught that I guess just in my own experience, you think I'm responsible for this half and you're responsible for this half, but in reality, we're responsible for 100% of it. There's things outside of our control, but the things that are inside of our control are the 100% that we could take accountability for. So I know that I've shared this idea with friends before, and they do the whole, how could you be 100% accountable? What if they do this to you? Well, they did that to you maybe because you let them or you allowed them, and it's a concept that I think a lot of people might not accept in my experience. But if you think about it as you have to accept 100% in what you can control. We're not asking you to accept what you can't control, just the things that you can.
Yeah, and I think it is a challenging and difficult thing for people to accept because they haven't been taught it. Or even if we're teaching you that or trying to teach you that, as though we're even in the conversation now that we're having, there's the possibility that you don't want to hear it, or that you don't want to learn, or that it's so daunting and so challenging for you that it's easier to just blame and be victimized in the relationship rather than taking 100% accountability for it. What gets me excited is when I have clients that tell me, you know what, Alex, I don't understand it yet, but I want to. So keep talking about it. Keep explaining it to me because I want to see it the way you see it. That gives me goosebumps when I have people that are open-minded and at least they're not shut down to it. The people that are shut down to it or just have come to the conclusion that it's just not like that, or that's thinking that's way out in left field or whatever. They're not going to grow. They're not going to get those opportunities to create extraordinary relationships that can be possible for them.
Yeah, and I'm not sure where the whole idea that relationships are 50-50 comes from. I'm not sure where I learned that, but I did used to think that when I was younger. So I think
probably the movies.
Yeah, maybe. But also too, maybe it had to do with my relationship with my parents and my siblings and how I was raised, and pretty much everybody is raised with that idea. But I think maybe if it were coming from the parents, if the parents taught you need to take responsibility and take accountability for our relationship and why it's this way. And I know that's maybe a complicated concept for, a 3-year-old, but as they get older, that's something that you can share and explain maybe in a simpler term until they grasp that concept.
Well, just now you talking about it, I'm realizing that obviously based on results, if you didn't realize that you were 100% accountable and responsible for your relationships, then as your father, I never taught you that. And it was something that I could have taught you at an earlier age had I had that awareness and that realization earlier on, which I didn't. It wasn't until maybe when you were 8 maybe 8, 9, 10 years old that I started to learn that and start to practice that and really start to embody that in my own relationship. So you didn't start to learn those concepts until maybe you were 12 or 13 years old, where you started to hear it for the first time, and then you started actually jumping into some of the trainings and experiencing that concept and really owning it for yourself.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't have to do with explaining to your kid what it is. You just have to be it, and
Yeah,
they'll
just
pick it up
model it.
and they'll know what it is. They'll know what it is so much so that they might not even know what it means to be in a 50-50 relationship. They'll just know what it means to be in a relationship, and to them that looks like 100% accountable.
One of the common errors I think that people, swim around in when they're thinking about relationships is, I think they enter into relationships for the wrong reasons. Not like things are good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just it's an error, meaning they're entering with this certain point of view and they're not getting the result that they want. So it's not effective, right? And I think the error in people entering in relationships when they're unconscious is they enter into relationships expecting to get something from the other person. So if I'm in a relationship with you and I have an empty bucket, meaning my emotional well-being and my emotional intelligence is really low, I'm at a 40%. That bucket is there's a deficiency there, right? I got some stuff missing. If I enter into a new relationship with you and there's something about you that excites me, that re-energizes me, it gives me those goodies, and it fills up that emotional bucket from 40 to 90, then all of a sudden now I need that from you. Every time I'm around you, I fill that emotional bucket up. Me entering into that relationship expecting you to fill that bucket up is an error, because the minute and the moment that you no longer show up like that and fill my bucket up is the moment that I start to question my relationship, going, I don't know if this is working anymore. It doesn't feel right. Maybe we've lost the connection. And I start, questioning the relationship because you're not giving me that goodie anymore. And the error is me entering that relationship in the first place expecting you to give me my fulfillment. And that's not the way it should go down. The way a healthy relationship should go down is I'm bringing full buckets to my relationship, 80% or higher in all 5 or 6 buckets that I got. And when you come to the relationship, you're bringing your 4 or 5 buckets filled between 80 to 90%. Then we're bringing wholeness to the relationship. And therefore, I don't need anything from you because I'm either complete, whole and complete, or I'm on my way to being there. And then there's no codependency in that kind of a relationship, right?
Yeah, and what I love about the bucket analogy is imagining the bucket full, like you said, either 80, 90, 100%, whatever it looks like, and being able to be there for that person and give to that person whatever you have extra, giving from overflow. So I imagine that bucket just overflowing with water so that the other person you're in a relationship with now has more, but not because they need it, but because you're willing to give that to them, whether it's happiness, love, acceptance, enjoyment, whatever it is. You are not giving it to them because they need it or because you need to be needed. You're giving it to them because you have extra of it to just give away.
That's right. And that's the best way to come from into a relationship or entering a relationship is having the intention to give from overflow, meaning I'm going to love myself first, wholly, fully, 100%, and then my 101, 103, 107, 112 goes to you. It goes to you in overflow and abundance. But I have to first start loving myself first so that I'm full, whole, and complete in the relationship, not needing anything from you. When we come back from the break, I'm going to explain a little bit in more detail about the aha moment that I had, that I shared with my wife, that it was almost a critical point there where I was almost, going to get divorced or not. I didn't, it was kind of like, it was epiphany that I had that I shared with her that took a little while for her to understand that. And I'll share that a little bit more in detail, but it was really a pivotal point for me in relationships, and it was a very powerful moment. And I just got some clarity on that, and I want to share that a little later on.
Yeah, and I'll ask you about that after the break, but before we go, I want to share a quick story. I learned about the overflow concept only a couple years ago. So I applied it to my friends and my bosses and my coworkers or whoever I needed to apply it to. And I kind of started to realize that I was a yes man. I said yes to everything. If you needed my help, I was right there. And I was giving so much without being full. It wasn't, even if I was full, I was depleting myself to say yes to help you. So in any relationship, I was giving you what you needed without having it. So I was taking away from myself, and I learned a lot about giving from it's coming from a different place. So the results look different when I'm giving from overflow. They look a lot better. Everything works out much smoother. I'm happier. They're happier. The results are just, they look great. Whereas when I was giving and depleting myself, the results weren't as good. I felt like I could do better, and that was dissatisfying for me. So all those kinds of things come into play when you're, I guess, depleting yourself and just giving. Now there's the other types of relationships where you're being used, or that other person is not at 100% and you're maybe not at 100% either, and you're giving to them, filling their bucket, and your bucket is depleting. And it's very, I don't want to say unhealthy, because what's really how could you justify that? But it's a little bit more, I guess, satisfying, and you get a lot better results when you're not putting yourself down to get there.
I remember you struggling through that phase, and I got to tell you, there was I could tell there was a lot of resentment on your side. You had some resentments because you were willing to go above and beyond to help people, and I think you felt like you weren't getting it back. Instead of deciding, wait, it's not their responsibility to give it back to me. If I'm going to give it, I got to learn to give it unconditionally. And I remember, I don't know when the pivotal moment was for you, but the minute you started to say no to things. Sorry, I got to take care of some stuff that I need to take care of. Hey, Jazz, because people around you got so used to you always giving unconditionally, and 98% of the time you would always say yes to things. So it's like you train people to always need you. And so every time it was, hey, Jazz, can you do that? Sorry, no, I got it. So it was a kind of a culture shock to probably not only your friends, but your immediate family. And inside of me, when you would say no to some of my requests, that initial selfish part of me was like, ugh. But then inside of me, once I shifted, it was like, hey, good for her, because she's now starting to realize that she's valuable enough, and she has to start taking care of herself. And that's a very powerful place for you to have to stand that ground and say, no, I'm important. I matter too. What's challenging is for the people around you, because they don't understand it at a conscious level, they easily can make up a story that you're changing. Something's different about you. You're now mean. you now don't care about me anymore. Instead of, no, I do care about you, but I also care about me. So I need to take care of me first, and whatever after I'm taken care of, whatever, if it's 30 minutes extra or 2 hours extra, I'll give that to you. But me giving you now 8 to 12 hours of my unconditional support, and then when I get home, I'm scrambling for the last 30 minutes for myself, that's not going to work anymore, right?
Yeah, and there's going to be, at least for me, I was always feeling guilt. I always felt so guilty saying no. Not because I didn't have the time or the energy, but I had to, again, look at myself and say, I'm important, my time's valuable too. And, I had to really start to love myself before I could start saying no without feeling guilty. And there's times too now where I feel a little bit guilty not being able to help people, but at the same time, I love me enough to kind of not ignore, but kind of just accept that guilt, that's just how I am, and I got to work on it some more to figure it out and get better.
Well, you'll get to a point where it won't be guilt anymore. It'll just be what it is. It'll just be, no just means no. Yeah, no doesn't mean no, I don't love you, or no, I don't want to help you. No just means no, that's all. Yeah. And you'll start to shift your perspectives and the value you're giving no.
Yeah, there's different stages, at least for me. I went first through, oh my God, they probably think I'm so mean, I'm so selfish, I started thinking about what they all thought. Then I got to the guilt, and that's a little bit where I'm at right now. And then I can just go to, it is what it is. All I said was no, it didn't mean anything else. So we can we could get back to more of it after the break. Stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.